Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. Today, imagine walking into a kindergarten classroom and instantly knowing which child would be the natural leader, which will be a peacemaker, which will be a creative dreamer. That's exactly what happened to today's guest over 40 years ago, and it sparked a revelation that would eventually help millions of people understand themselves and their relationships better. Welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of extraordinary writers who's dedicated their lives to transforming how we see ourselves and our world. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and today we're exploring the fascinating intersection of personality, relationships, and the power of understanding how we're truly wired. Our guest today is Marita Littauer, a brilliant mind behind 20 books, including the best-selling Wired That Way. But Marita's story doesn't end with writing. She's a woman who's reinvented herself multiple times, from conference leader to house flipper, and now champions helping women live their best lives. Without further ado, welcome to our show. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you.
Of course.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around, because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. To everybody listening today, right before we hit that record button, you held up the whole stack of all of your books right there. So just there, I know you're an amazing candidate here. You're going to learn a lot from you. You've had a lot of writing experience to share.
Yes, I can't. The books they're too many. I can't even hold them all. So this is one stack.
Yeah, look at that. It's almost like a cartoon. You could stack them all up and drown in all of them. It's a good thing, though. It's great because it means that you've really shared your knowledge and shared your expertise, and it's just something wonderful that we all love to do here as writers. But yeah, I'm wondering if we can get a little started by talking a little bit about yourself, getting to know you a little bit more. You were an interior design and house flipper before you became a writer, so I'm wondering,
actually, you got that in the reverse order.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. Please.
No, it's no problem. My life has a lot of facets to it.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a little confusing to keep up with all of it. I did major in interior design in college. However, I did not graduate with that degree, but I always had that love and that interest. And then I diverted to that. My very first book was written in, I just looked it up the other day, now I can't remember, 1986, I believe. Yes, 1986, I wrote my first book, and it was on color and wardrobe and makeup. And you're too young to know, although having your colors done seems to be making a resurgence. But that's what I started doing with my interior design and color expertise. Back in the day, it was popular to have your colors done to help you know which colors were going to be most complementary to you and so forth. And so my first book, let's see here, I can get my hands on it. My first book was called Shades of Beauty, and it was on color and wardrobe and makeup and so forth. And I wrote that, and that kind of launched my writing world. And then 40 years later, I got back to using that interior design knowledge in flipping houses and then now remodeling houses. The difference is flipping houses, I own the house and I take all the risk. Remodeling houses is you own the house and you hire me to come redo your bathroom.
Understood. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for that slight confusion there, but I'm glad that we have that background information.
Yeah.
That's wonderful stuff. Ever since that first book, though, I mean, clearly you just got very inspired by writing, and just one book after another just kept coming. I'm wondering where all the ideas came from. Was there a certain catalyst that set you forward on your path?
Well, the interesting thing on this first book, because I was only like 23 at the time that I wrote this, is first off, I had a little bit of an advantage, and that is that my mother was a well-known popular Christian speaker and author. And I can picture, having spent a lot of time in the publishing world, I can just picture the publishing committee sitting around a table and they're saying, you know, this idea of having your colors done is really popular. And the book Color Me Beautiful had just come out at the time. And I can picture the committee at the publishing house saying, we need a book on this. And someone said, well, Florence's daughter does that. And so literally what happened for me was I received a letter in the mail and the publisher said, we understand that this is what you do. Would you like to write a book on it? Now, they had no idea, and it was because of my mother. I mean, I fully acknowledge that I had an advantage there because my mother wrote 40 books in her day. So I definitely have that in the genes, you might say. But they offered me a book, and of course, they had no idea whether I could write or not, but they knew that my mother could write. And I think they were pretty confident that Florence would not let Marita turn in a bad book. And she didn't. I wrote it, and then she worked with me on it. But from then, it became easier. But I think the key thing that I would like to share with your audience or of aspiring writers, or for those who are aspiring authors, one of the things that made all my books easier for me, including my first one, Shades of Beauty, which you can find used on Amazon.com. But one of the things that made it easier is speaking on the topic first. I used to, back in the day, go to women's events and women's groups and even people's living rooms and do a little presentation on having your colors done and what a difference wearing the right colors would make for you and so forth. And because I had a lot of time working with the content, working with the material in a spoken version and getting feedback, direct feedback from people on the spot, I had opportunities to see what works and what doesn't work, what word choices work, what word choices were not as effective. And that made the book writing so much easier.
Understood. And that's really cool that you have that experience of going to places though too and speaking about it. That's always great to know when you write a book, but you can amplify your reach just by also going and interacting with people too. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and in fact, when I have taught, I spent 30 plus years teaching, speaking, and writing with my mother. And one of the things I used to always tell people is, if you have something worth speaking about, you have something worth writing about. And if you have something worth writing about, you have something worth speaking about. Many times people think, well, no one will want to have me come and speak unless I am an author, unless I've written the book. But if you have expertise, which would come out in the book, and you have an ability to present that effectively, there are a lot of groups out there who are looking for speakers. So it gives you a great opportunity to practice your material.
Understood. I like that a lot. And that's just only one facet that you've been involved in too. Today I'd like to kind of shift our focus to Wired That Way, which is one of your most popular books, if I understand correctly.
Yes, that is correct. It is my best-selling book. Let me see here. Oh, right here on the top. There it is. Wired That Way.
Yeah. Beautiful colors too, right there. Just, kind of going back to the color idea.
Yes. Yes. And each color represents a different personality type.
I like that. That's beautiful. And, you do mention in this book that the personality types are actually based off of the ancient Greek understanding of this 2,400-year-old system. So I'm wondering what drew you towards this.
Well, again, it was my mother. So, I have a unique path. My mother, her best-selling book is called Personality Plus. And it's been translated into more than 25 languages and sold millions of copies. But I had the opportunity as a young adult to be at the seminars that my mother was teaching. And I was in the back of the room selling books for her while she was speaking. And I did some speaking too. Eventually, I developed my own material, but that was the start. And people would, in the back of the room, would say, they'd pick up her book, which is Personality Plus. Then they'd pick up another one of her books, which is Personality Plus for Parents, and another one, which was Personality Plus for Marriage, and so forth. And then I wrote one that was on spiritual life and personalities. And people would hold up the books and go, do you have one book that has all of this? And that was where Wired That Way came from. And so it came from an obvious felt need from the potential customers. The customers were asking for this book. And it was published in 2006. And now here in 2025, I'm still getting royalty checks twice a year from the sales of this book.
Wow. Well, that's definitely something that's incredible. And you must be so proud that this has come from something your mother inspired you to do. And
Yes.
Now you're still making those sales. That's incredible.
Yes. And of course, I've seen in my family life, my parents' marriage, when my mother first got a hold of the concepts that are in her books and in Wired That Way, when my mother first got a hold of those concepts of understanding the different personality types and understanding that just because my father, her husband, was different from her did not make him wrong. And her applying those true principles of understanding his personality type really transformed their marriage. And they started having couples groups in their home where they would discuss chapter by chapter this book. So I grew up with it. So I grew up knowing that these several thousand-year-old concepts worked and were relevant today. Now, obviously, those original concepts today in my book and my mother's former books, they have been enhanced, developed, have more nuance, and so forth. But those original concepts are tried and true, we'll say.
Understood. Well, diving a little bit more into the book then, the book does suggest that, it gives you some emotional needs for every personality type. You talk about how you need to use those to transform relationships and marriage especially. I'm wondering if you want to give us a little bit of a hint towards that, a little sneak peek towards more of your insights in that regard.
Sure. Basically, as the cover indicates, we're talking about 4 basic personality types. And of course, no one is exactly one, but most of us generally have a primary personality type, and then often a secondary that can be as strong as 50%. And a smattering of the others. But usually we have a primary mode of operation, I like to call it. And in the book, we use the original Greek terms, which are sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. However, we encourage folks to use whatever terms you want. If you prefer yellow, red, green, blue, that's fine. If you prefer, we also use a modern day adjective such as popular, powerful, perfect, and peaceful. And we encourage people to use whichever terminology works the best for you. Those ancient Greek terms are hard to say, and for a lot of people, they're confusing. Other people like them because they don't have a built-in meaning to them, where popular, powerful, perfect, and peaceful do. But what we say is that this is not about labels. It's about relationships. So and if you've heard someone else teach this similar material using different terms, that's okay, because it's about relationships. And the popular sanguine is generally represented by the color yellow. And that type of person is the fun, loud, outgoing, never met a stranger kind of person. And then the powerful choleric, represented by the color red, is the strong, driven, goal-oriented kind of person. And then the perfect melancholy, represented by the color blue, is the deep, thoughtful, introspective, perfectionistic. And Danielle, I suspect that would be definitely some of you. I've never seen someone be so prepared for an interview as you are, and your body language, your demeanor indicates that, and your gracious, soft-spoken tones would indicate that that's probably at least a good portion of your personality type. And then the peaceful phlegmatic is represented by the color green, which is comforting, like being out in nature. And the peaceful phlegmatic is more the background kind of person. They're not the one who wants to be up front. They're not the driven person. They're more the one who goes along. They're easygoing and very comfortable to be with. So that's a quick overview.
Well, thank you for sharing that overview. And it's very cool that you're able to look at somebody and get to know right away what the most likely personality type is. I guess that kind of goes back to the introduction of this podcast that I gave, right? Just being able to give a look and see, okay, that's probably who they are.
And there is a whole chapter in the book, Wired That Way, on that. And it's called The Visible Clues, because sometimes if you ask someone to take a personality profile, which we, of course, have available both online and in a paper format, but if you ask someone to take a personality profile, sometimes it's a little intimidating for people. Like if you're having a hard time with someone and you go to them and say, excuse me, would you take this personality profile so I can figure you out? That's a little intimidating. But if you know what to look for, the body language, the vocal cues, the personal space, all of that, you can, and like that I'm talking with my hands, those kinds of things are clues that can help you identify someone's personality type almost better than they can do themselves.
Understood. Yeah, well, I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of an overview for that. So if you're listening today and you're curious to know a little bit more about it, go ahead and pick up Wired That Way, because you can just learn even more about it. And I think it could help you definitely improve your relationships and your understanding of yourself as well.
And the book is available free at Amazon.com for Kindle Unlimited members.
Ah, there you go. Perfect. Nice little perk right there.
Yes.
So let's transition a little bit to talking about the writing process. Somebody like you who's written so many books has to have so many insights about this. I'm wondering, you've been writing for many, many years. I'm wondering if your writing style evolved during that time, or if there's any certain tricks and tips that lasted the test of time.
Well, yes, I think my writing style has definitely evolved. And while Wired That Way is my most recent book, and it was published in 2006, I still write regularly. Now I write for blogs and magazines, shorter, quicker pieces. But my writing style has definitely evolved. As I said, when I wrote Shades of Beauty, I really wasn't a writer at all, but I've grown to love writing and can do it fairly quickly these days, especially with the shorter pieces. But I think the two key things that I want to suggest for people who are aspiring writers is, as I already mentioned, first, test your material. And this is for nonfiction. I only write nonfiction. I have no expertise in fiction, though I read it voraciously. But test your material with live audiences. And an audience can be 6 people in a living room. It doesn't have to be 100 people with you on a stage and a microphone and bright lights. But that opportunity to test out your ideas and work through it with people, I think is really essential. And once you've perfected the ideas, then when you sit down at the computer, I tell people, and this is what I've done, is I pretend I have an audience in front of me that never needs to get up and go to the bathroom and wants to hear the long version of everything I have to say, because in print, I can get it all out there. And another thing as a part of that is, don't worry about it being perfect. I think perfection, and you've probably heard this from other authors, Danielle, is that perfection is the enemy of accomplishment. And the beautiful thing about the computer, and I wrote Shades of Beauty handwritten in the beginning. That was, that long ago. But the beauty of the computer is how easy it is to edit. So you kind of just do a brain dump and get all your ideas out there. And you don't worry about spelling, you don't worry about punctuation, you don't worry about any of that at that beginning phase. Just get the ideas out there. The other thing that I want to mention that I did that I think is somewhat unusual, perhaps even unique, is I reached out to people and said, I'm going to be writing this book. Now, again, I have these people because I spoke to a live audience and I gathered emails and they became my Facebook and Instagram friends and so forth. And I would reach out to these people and say, I'm going to write a book on this. Are you interested in following me in this process? And I didn't need a lot, but I would have 10 to 20 people who would respond and say, yes, they were interested. And so as soon as I finished one chapter, and ideally it was at night, I finished one chapter, I would send that chapter out to my reading group, that these people who had volunteered to follow along with me on the book. And I would tell them, this is my first draft. I haven't even read it through myself sometimes, because sometimes it was like 11 o'clock at night and I was bleary-eyed. And I would send it out and ask them to respond, make any corrections, tell me if something didn't make sense. And different people that were following along with me had different skill sets. Some were better at content. Some were better at grammar and punctuation. Some never responded at all. Others, when I'd wake up the next morning, there'd be 6 emails waiting for me with people with corrections and responses. And it really helped to clean up the material and make it what potential readers really wanted.
I like that process. It sounds like you went through a couple different phases with it, but at the end of the day, whatever it was ultimately did help the writing. So that's something that I think a lot of authors listening today could definitely implement in their own lives.
Yes. You get those potential participants from social media and or live audiences.
Perfect. I like that, kind of using your resources to your advantage.
Yes.
Speaking of resources, I've been looking at this background you have set up. Is this your writing station?
Yes, it is. This is my office.
I like that. That's wonderful. It's always nice to know where writers write. It's, some people enjoy going to a coffee shop and writing. Others have a nice setup like this that really develops their creative space. I'm wondering, was there any intentional decision in using this area that worked better than others?
No, strangely, this space was like this when my husband and I bought this house. And it's kind of like a closet. When I show people my house, and they often will say things like, why did they turn this closet into an office? I'm like, well, no, there's another closet over there. This was always custom built in. What you see behind me, there is the exact same setup in front of me. So this actually has 2 desks and shelves and cabinetry and internet hookups and lots of electrical outlets. And so it was set up this way, and it works really well.
That's perfect. I think I like it a lot. It's bright, it's cheerful. You have the plant too, so it's giving you some fresh, vibes through there. So
yeah, I have it closed for lighting, but I have right here. Let's see if I can get it. Well, you can't really tell, but there's a big window out there.
It's perfect. I'm guessing it's really great with helping with any creative challenges or writer's block that you might come with it, right?
Yes, definitely. It helps to have the right setup. I'm going to close this. I can tell a difference in the sound.
Yes, of course. Speaking of writer's blocking, any creative challenges, I'm wondering if you have any specific strategies that have worked for you in that regard. If you ever find yourself just stuck and you don't know what else to write, what do you usually do?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I have not shared this particular thought in years and years and years. But if you look up behind me here, and you would do this on the internet today, but I have a book up there called Bartlett's Familiar Quotations. And I used to use that book all the time, but you could do it on the internet today. But when I have been stuck in the past, and this was in the past, when you used a book, I would get out Bartlett's Familiar Quotations and look up quotes. And these are quotes from like famous people on the topic that I'm working on. And as I would read those quotes, and again, you do this on the internet today, as I would read those quotes, they would inspire me. And often I would start a chapter on the certain topic with the quote from whoever it was that inspired me. And I would start with, as so-and-so says, and go from there.
Understood. I like that. And using quotes is definitely something that can inspire you, and it's good that you have them ready to go right there for you.
Yeah, it's funny. I just wrote a blog post a couple days ago. It's a silly one, but I just got back from a vacation. You might notice I'm a little tan, and I just was at a beach vacation for a week in Turks and Caicos. And someone asked me, remember I mentioned I read fiction voraciously. And so someone on Facebook asked me what I read while I was on vacation. So I decided to do a blog post on what I read on vacation. They were just the 3 books I read in a week on a beach. And So what I did is I used AI, same kind of idea, only instead of using Bartlett's familiar quotations, I used AI and I said, what is the definition of a beach read? And AI gave me this wonderful definition of a beach read. And so if you went and looked at my blog post, which is at thebestlifeproject.com, with best life being hyphenated, if you went and looked at my blog post, there is that AI definition as a part of my blog post. And I'm going to be writing in the next few days. I'm interviewing someone this afternoon and someone tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to be writing a blog post on girlfriend trips.
Oh, very cool.
And so I've done a lot of this trip I did to Turks and Caicos was with 5 girlfriends. 6 of us were there for a week and we're still friends. So that's a pretty amazing challenge. But I looked up AI. I said, what are some guidelines for girlfriend trips? And boom, here comes these guidelines. And so I'm actually going to use some of those in my article. And I'll say that's where they came from. I'm not going to pretend that they're my original ideas, but I'm going to use that AI guidelines and I'll use that as kind of my outline. And then I'll fill it in with stories from myself and others that I'm interviewing for this blog post.
I think that's really cool. And using technology is an amazing thing to do these days as well. You know, we have to embrace the use of AI, and it's great to know that you've been doing the same.
Yeah, that's first time I've really done it was for this beach read article I wrote.
Understood. Yeah, it's a great idea. You know, I've heard people using AI for things like research, for idea generation, and in this case, blog post ideas. So it's a great thing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, you know, if people want to get in touch and learn a little bit more about you and all of your books and what you've been doing here, what is the best way to connect?
Facebook is probably what I use the most, and it's Marita Littauer on Facebook. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm not as active on Instagram as I am on Facebook, but also websites. Of course, I already mentioned my blog is best-lifeproject.com, and my personality work is thepersonalities.com.
Understood. So we're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. So we'll have everybody click on over there and check it out. Don't miss out. If you've enjoyed this conversation so far, there's even more to come. So all this being said, I'm wondering if you happen to have any last tips and tricks to offer the audience today.
Well, I think probably every aspiring writer out there has been told over and over the importance of social media. And I certainly agree with that and affirm that, especially if you're looking to go with a traditional publisher, which all but one of my books was traditionally published. I self-published my very last book, but most of them were traditionally published. They want to know who your audience is. It's a much more competitive world out there today than it was when I was writing, because you didn't have that easy self-publishing option that is available today. And I know many, 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 many authors who have self-published in one form or another, print on demand or buying thousands of copies of books, and discover that once their immediate family all has a copy, and of course they don't want to buy one, they expect one free, that finding your audience once you publish the book is difficult. So I really encourage people to flip that dynamic and find your audience first, and then work on getting the book published. Because once you've got a network to send the word out through, your sales opportunities will be much greater.
Thank you for that. That's an amazing tip that I think everybody, again, could be using, you know, as soon as they're ready for those next steps in their writing. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and to see your wealth of experience, all of the books. It's been really incredible. I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been an honor.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, please do. Yes.
My married name is Marita Littauer, but I write under Marita Littauer, which is my maiden name. And so if you're looking for me on Amazon, that's the name to look for.
I was curious about that when I was researching it. I was like, you know, it has to be her because of the first name.
Yes, I know. And it's a unique first name, so it does help in that. But yes, I probably should have put myself out there as Marita Littauer, although Marita Littauer is actually my name.
Understood. Well, hey, that's how we can find you then. Perfect. So keep that in mind, everybody. Make sure to click over to those links in the description box to stay in touch. And for everyone listening, just remember that understanding how you're wired isn't about putting yourself in a box. It's about unlocking your potential, building connections with people, and keeping all of Marita's insights in mind. So again, find all of her books, Wired That Way, online. It's free on Kindle, like she mentioned. Click on the link to the description box, and just thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to hear your wisdom, and just thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful.
I love talking about books. Thank you, Danielle.
Of course. And to all of our listeners, just remember that every expert was once a beginner. So keep pursuing your mission. Everyone has a story to tell. Keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.